I think we could move on to our second talk now. And Gaurav has previewed things to come. And I'll go ahead and just jump straight into it. Gaurav and I have actually been friends for a couple of years now since I've been in the industry. I've only been in the industry a couple of years when I think about it, but Gaurav has been. We've worked together a couple of times, and I'm really happy to have him here. He's the CEO of BeatSkillz, another company called Tone Empire, and a few others that you may have seen in your travels if you're into buying plugins. And he's been nice enough to share with us a little bit about his journey, lessons learned, things like that, and that there are many people that I know that are probably in this chat that are thinking about becoming independent audio developers, becoming contractors, starting their own plugin company, and Gaurav will have a lot of insights on things to do, things not to do, things to be aware of, and so on. Welcome, Gaurav. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Josh. I'll continue in the style of Stefano's self-deprecating humor. Stefano being very brilliant. I don't know how many people would be, this is the boring part of the chat, which is running a company. Developers hate that, all of the other stuff you have to deal with. And as we were mentioning before, you have to get a team to manage the logistics. So we're also like not a very large company. We're a medium, small size company. And we're also like about 7 to 8 people who are there. But primarily it's the same way. It's like divided into certain tasks. I think the biggest challenge that I think people who are aspiring to be developers, I think that'll be a question probably is like, it's not as one part is hard enough, as you've seen with Stefano's presentation, is to make a really nice product, to make a functioning system. The other thing, and this is just the DSP part, then comes, the compatibility where the sponsors, Juice come into play, and Juice makes it, much easier for us to actually create in one system and then have that deploy over, multiple types of DAWs and, even operating systems and machines and all of that. So that definitely is like a boon. It's an awesome tool. So it takes a lot of years to, even with all this technology and tools, to really understand what are the common problems you face in certain digital workstations. Because when you really take a product to market, you're going to face a lot of trouble. You're going to really face customers with different configurations, with different machines, with systems permissions which are not working. And then it's not a guarantee that your product, even with all the work that you've done, lands there and works. So customer support becomes, in that space, I think, the primary thing to focus on. I think when we learned, our company is about 5-6 years old now. So in our second year, we upped our game and started to focus a lot on customer support, because people need to build a trust with you. They need to know that in case it doesn't work, you're there to help them, and then the common problems, the answers to things, and that makes them very happy. And sometimes we just have to give refunds, because sometimes it just won't work, even if you catch their computer and you're remote controlling it, and there's some funny stuff going on which you can't predict. But most of the time, of course, with Juice and all of that, it should work. Now, obviously the DSP, what you're trying to achieve, why do you really make a plugin becomes also one part, which is the non-scientific portion of things. I think because I come from a music background, I've had a 20-year career, I still, like I said, I'm actually a musician. So I come from that spot. I have a background of computer engineering, but it just stayed at that. It's not obviously as advanced as Stefano has gone, the whole route, and that's why he's so brilliant as he is. I come from that basic understanding of computer science and programming, and then of course music. So whatever we've been developing is, Josh, primarily coming from our own needs and our own, feeling of what we think could be a very useful product, something that we think we can develop, which is very exciting to us primarily in the whole process, and bring it to the world. Our particular approach, and I'm not saying this is not all companies, but our approach is more stylistic, or it's more about maybe not reinventing or actually just inventing something completely new. but taking from what like filters, you've heard, sounds that you're familiar with, but maybe combining them in a process which has never been done before or is uniquely very interesting together. For example, like using two technologies in our tone empire line. We're using convolution and we're using circuit modeling together. Because I mean, to my ears, like I feel like, for example, that convolution and dynamic convolution can actually capture nuances of gear, because it's literally like making a sample library. And but again, it has its limitations. And combining that real imprint of the real hardware that you sample with the diversity, the variation you can build with equations, which is just like you can go in between, you can do this and actually model behavior. So when you do both of them, that's like a unique thing to us. I think that's our approach for some of the plugins at Tone Empire, and favorably so in our in our line of products, because people respond that say, hey, this actually, I can hear the those certain things as compared to just a mathematical model, because there are certain things you miss. Certainly, I'm sure Stefano will be able to. That's what he does, models all those the small things like you were talking about, the noise, the conversion, the aliasing. Now coming to aliasing, like we have a bit crusher plugin which has got also convolution on top of it. So it samples the A to D converters like Samplex, that product. It captures the A to D D to A converters. It also does the bit crushing with that kind of thing. So it combines two technologies where people also get like the filters and the stereo width of the sampler, not just dividing the sample. And in this case, aliasing is a good thing. People are buying those SP1200s for like $8,000 for pitching down the sound for the aliasing. So you have these purists versus the the old school guys. So it's catering to two fields of thought or two schools of thought, like trying to make a very lovely compressor. The expectation is that, hey, at oversampling should be provided, so there's least amount of aliasing. And then you have these colored products where there's like, hey, why don't we have a knob for noise? It would be great if you just have like a continuous noise sample or a noise generator which adds that that kind of vibe. So putting a product together then becomes more than just a technological advancement or something. It becomes also about UI. Like we've been appreciated, or like for our UIs a lot. People say that, hey, you know what? It's so simple, it's so immediate, and it looks good. So does that really play a role? Because many people worry or have that, hey, why couldn't I just have a simple interface? And yeah, I mean, it works in many cases. Like some companies, they just have a flat, simple interface and it's functional. It's got so many functions. There's not really any scope for design. But being a creative person, I think it's a very important aspect. What do you do when you look at a plugin before you even hear it? You see it, you see a small thumbnail of it at a store. So why are people going to pick, your plugin over somebody else? It becomes a very, very essential factor. If it just looks like a gray box with some knobs, even before they can, put a judgment, it might be the most fabulous thing. It might be the most best sounding thing that you were probably looking for. But thumbnail, small thinking about that is not appealing or is not popping out of that store. It's not going to, it's just going to pass by. And you see something which is popping out, immediately you see some, controls which are appealing or large or simple. It, to a certain customer base, it does appeal. Not to everyone, maybe, but to a certain customer base. Then I think the longer journey, Josh, becomes about your audience, just like an artist. So then it's not really about feeding the market sometimes as to, oh, well, let me top that plugin, or, let me create this that has never been done before. It becomes, you start knowing your audience. Your audience speaks to you. You will get tickets, you will get responses, you will get social media interaction. Social media interaction is something that, you just can't overlook. It is such an essential part of the audience of people really telling you, some of it can be really funny, or it can be really, hitting you for no reason. And some of it can be really great criticism, or really things, you can think it all, but sometimes a customer, even somebody, a newcomer might be able to tell you, hey, I wish it, there was a knob for this, or I wish you reduced the number of controls. And you think, and you're like, this is coming from another point of view, and it actually makes sense. It's so why not give the customer in the next update something that they were asking for, some very valid point. So if one is able to do that, and not close oneself to just okay, I thought of this and I think I'm really superb, and and I do think they know more than me. It's like, if you have to give that up, you have to really be like, okay, I might be the most technologically advanced person, and I might know this and that, but the smallest like user could tell you a small thing about it, about your product, which be like, wow, that's going to sell a lot more because it makes the job, or the excitement or the usability more interesting or easier, or whatever. So I think that that customer base you build and what they say becomes something you should not ignore, because I think that's a pitfall. The first year you get really offended, but the first year you'll be a developer like, hey, I put all this effort and this guy's pointing out that zipper noise on the volume control. But you see, that's experience, right? You understand that Juice has a function for that. It's called the gain with ramp option. I don't know if it's implemented the same way as Stefano's saying. Stefano's method obviously is more complicated, might be even way more pleasing to the ear and more natural, like literally like a potentiometer than that thing. But all those things, all those little things, they matter, because by the end, if they're using a tool day in out and they get really used to a tool, there has to be something, you got to learn what was special about that tool. And it's not always just the sound or the the functionality. It's a lot to be like a connection. Like if I'm sitting here with a red Juno, I make a connection with this synth. I see it's got just one oscillator. It's just a single oscillator. So why are Junos selling like hotcakes, like a single oscillator synth? It's not even it's so dependent on its chorus. You switch off the chorus, it's gone. But people just just buy this like hotcakes, their emulations. So it's about a lot more things, than just sometimes the technology.
Yeah, you bring up a great point, which is that it is a lot of things. And so some people may be thinking, so where do I start? So I'm a beginning audio developer. I want to make my own plugin company. Sometimes people come into our Discord and they ask, what should I make? Where should I start? What advice would you give to them?
Yeah, I would say start with something that would be useful to you personally first. I mean, if you are a musician or you come from a background, or even if you're an engineer, it could be something very simple like a filter. Okay, but you could add something to it which is very unique in its space, and if you have a reason to sell it to someone, like if you're selling it now, you're going outside your house, you're going to an audience who already has so many options and so many stuff they already own. So the reason of putting that out has to be strong, even though it's simple. Never be deterred by the fact that, oh, this has been done before, or oh, my plugin Slamdog has been copied like a gazillion times. People have said the same thing. Like I feel because I was the first one who did that, I was scoffed at because they were like, oh, how can this be a bus mixing plugin with just 3 knobs? So from personal experience, I can tell you that it was the advertising or the reasoning or stuff behind it of being the most simple plugin on the market, but nobody combined something in that way, which gave you a mix bus compressor, just a low end knob, a high end knob, and a stereo expander. That's it, simple. So if you're reasoning the way I put it out there, I think the reasoning appealed to EDM producers. It appealed to a certain audience who was like, hey, I don't want to go through a 60 band EQ. Okay, I want to make a beat and I want to have 2 controls to fatten it up and thicken it up, or I need a filter which could just clean up this stuff, and it's appealing enough, or it's just got the right bandwidth or the right, like you say, mapping in a way between the frequencies. Just could be a simple thing like mapping. They just might not like the filters and some other plugin because it has the entire range and it's not fitting out well. So just that mapping that you went for was so easy that every time they turned that filter, they got to that point A to point B immediately. And that's it. Like you didn't reinvent the wheel, but you gave people a very strong reason, which you showed them why it's a great product for them to buy. So I think it comes from your own, need and story. Like, what's the story? So I think that's a key point. Yeah.
You bring up a great point, and I think that one thing that I think about a lot is about going against the grain of the trend, which sounds like something that is what you've done. If you look to the early 2000s, a lot of the tools and a lot of the plugins that were being created were kind of all-purpose plugins, plugins and synthesizers that tried to do a lot in one plugin. And now recently, it feels as though this has gone the other way, which is where you have a plugin such as Arcade, which has a very distinct identity. It's an identity that's not for everybody, but it's for a certain type of producer that wants to create a certain type of workflow. And
Right.
you've done that with BeatSkillz as well. So for people who may not be familiar with that brand, can you talk a little bit just about how you've found that identity for your brand?
Oh, thank you for that question. It's a lovely question, something I'd love to answer. So me being like a 80s kid, growing up in that time, I was exposed to all this pop music because synthesizers were new and drum machines and these things were new. So although I didn't have access to those things, but I grew up on that music and it stays with you. As a child, what you listen to stays with you. So BeatSkillz is a brand which is basically going to stick with everything, kind of 70s, 80s, little bit of the 90s, that's it. Like, we don't go beyond that. It's not a crazy. So we're able to cater to that genre, so like we're making old school samplers, we're making synthesizers, we're making, we already have very successful drum machines like synthwave drums and all, which are pretty much like on Plugin Boutique, the top seller. We've been told that in the synthwave genre, we have the top selling products, period. So that kind of proves the point that if you stick with one spot, which is what BeatSkillz is about, and gets everyone who's in that genre to be interested in the products that you make, it kind of works out. So even us being limited, like purposely being in that space that, hey, we only make old school hip hop or synthwave or retro or, keyboards and things like that. It's a kind of flavor. It gives you an identity. It immediately gives you that, oh, they're not making the next, sound design, swish plugin, whatever. Great, good for people who do. But that following that cult following of sorts, that, man, the sounds we need, these guys have it. The controls we need, these guys have it. So I think that is kind of a brand identity thing. Like you said, with output, they have a certain workflow. We have a certain workflow. Our motto is less controls, more sound, or more variation, more colors. But the motto is it's not going to be a 13-page synth. We're never going to do that. The maximum we've done is a new release called Techno Keys, which is a 4-page synth with lots of things. But the reason we have these pages is like the first page is only minimal controls. It's like when you hit it, you can immediately start playing sounds. And with a few tweaks, you can really change sounds. If you want to go deeper, okay, go to page 2. If you want to go even deeper, you go to page 3 and page 4. But like I said, the concept is always less controls, the vintage way of working, fast and quick, immediate results. If I may sum it. So that's something we stick with at BeatSkillz.
Yeah, that's really awesome. There are a couple questions. One question is from Jacques, who asks, do you have any advice on how to get customers? Do you advertise on Facebook? Are there any other better channels? How do you connect? When you were just starting and you first had this vision, how did you first connect with a customer?
Yeah, well, just do the basic routes of the free stuff first, which is go to forums like, KVR. There's Bedroom Producers blog. There's a lot of places where, you can get news out for free. You don't really have to pay anybody. And that's the first step, because they'll just publish a news for free. So if you have something which is interesting, it's being exposed to a lot of customers, because this is at point where you don't have an email list. This is at a point where you're starting from zero. So that's the first thing. Because even for Facebook, you see, to use Facebook advertising effectively, you need to have some audience, because then Facebook can multiply that audience. They have tools like find similar customers or, find, similar kind of people. Although you can tag and ride on other, names that you think your product is similar to. Say your product is similar to Arturia, for example. So, you can use some keywords which are similar or familiar that your ad can, reach that kind of people. But I think Facebook is most effective, in my opinion, now, once you have a certain bit of an audience. Then you can use the real deep tools in that to, to expand and go forth. Instagram is a great place if you're starting with nothing, because the more you demonstrate your product with the right tags, with a video, and it doesn't have to be fancy. It doesn't have to be with a expensive camera. You don't have to do all that kind of polished marketing. I think that even with all the polished marketing we sometimes do, the traction we get from Instagram still is very important. It's a very identity oriented place. So like I make a lot of videos with my synths and the plugins I use, and that really gets us so much engagement, like right there, that I think that becomes a great tool, and it's a free tool. Again, it's just free, so probably start from there, and maybe go to YouTubers, try to approach some of them like Josh, and see if you're developing something. He like he opens that fact that if you're developing something, call him. Like they might feature you if you got something good going. So that's again a great way to put forth some advertising. Go to YouTubers who you think might be interested in your product. So yeah, I mean, that's the way. That's how you start. You build. Make a free product if you can initially to get a mailing list.
I have a question that leads on kind of from that one, if that's okay. So you mentioned the importance of listening to your customers' feedback and acting upon it.
Right.
I just want to ask about your process of gathering customer feedback in the development and release process, like whether you've got some user surveys with incentives that you send out, or beta testing, or whether you find that you can get enough information from like support, inquiries, and Facebook and Instagram feedback. Like what's your kind of suggestion for the best way of gaining customer insight?
Yeah, it's a very tricky thing, but it's a great question actually. I think the initial thing, when you start out, it's like nobody cares, right? Because you don't have a product yet. So when you do start out, probably the best thing is, some people might not agree with me, but is to show the stages of the product you're making already on Instagram or YouTube videos. That, hey, you know what, I'm developing this thing, and over a period of 6 months or whatever, you've got like 10 videos out of 20 that I reached here. You will find that people will, who are interested will start engaging. Hey, what if it had this thing? And what if it had that? And that, I think, is a great way. Same with Facebook or whatever. So if you show the process, I mean, the whole thing is that if you show the process of what's going on, like some people might become very protective about their product and be like, hey, I don't want to show anybody could copy me and, do this. So it really depends on the attitude of the developer. Like a person like me, I'm totally free. I'm not doing anything that's not been done before. Let's face it. My strengths are really, my ideology. My strengths are my sounds. The strength is using what's around and making combinations. So if I go with that notion that, I'm developing something secretly, I'm not doing that. So for me, I'm free of that burden. So right. With the case of Samplex, which is one of our popular products, the version 1, I did the whole thing for 1 year on internet. So by the time it came out, not only did it have certain things that people wanted very strongly, repeatedly, but it had automatically created a wanting and a longing and a buzz. So all I was getting was emails. When is this coming out? I need this tomorrow. So compared to a blind product launch or a secretive product launch, I've realized that sometimes, this whole build-up of the process of revealing and talking and interacting gets your word out there, and gets you the information, like you said, you need.
Yeah, sounds like it's a good idea to build up that traction and excitement about the product. It's really good advice. Correct. Thank you.
Correct. But beta testing is also a great system, like you proposed. I think that's a good thing. Give out some, time licensed copies.
I was just wondering, like, I think people have said in the past when they've sent out kind of anonymous surveys, they've got more honest feedback than what people might give on like a social media platform. But from the range of what people have said to you on social media that you described, it sounds like you have got some quite honest feedback.
They will tear you apart. Are you kidding? You don't need to. They will tear you apart. You'll get that feedback. Today, people are not as shy as probably they were. but you never know, I mean, maybe the survey method is also, probably very valid in its own space,
Yeah. You say a great thing, which is that sometimes you just got to try it, right? There are a lot of people who talk about trying to get it right on the first time and trying to just perfect the process. But sometimes the process needs iteration in order to perfect itself. Even with large companies, they have roadmaps. Like these things don't just instantaneously appear in their final form, right? These are companies that have a story that they need to tell, and it takes time to develop those relationships, and it takes time to tell those stories and make the connection. And you're bringing up a great point in that being able to tell your story is quite important. If you just approach somebody with a product, they don't know you and you don't know them, you have no connection in order to be able to get them to purchase. Sometimes you have to develop that relationship before you can ask them to buy in. Sometimes it's about giving before
taking. Yeah. And also, see, you have to consider the fact that, you're in a very competitive market today. You have to really, digest the fact that even when I started out, it was competitive enough, but now it's even more competitive. So your reason, for sticking around a long time, I would emphasize that. Don't do it for a one-off thing and expect that if it doesn't work out, you really have to love wanting to make a product, that, hey, I want to make this anyway, whether this fails or it succeeds. Had I known the path that I would have to go through to get here and, seen all the failures and the pitfalls, I probably would have never done it. I would like, who's going to deal with all that kind of, customer support and like all this backlash you get and blah, blah, blah. So it really truly has to come from, the interest and the love of wanting to do, many things and hoping that some of it passes through. It's just the same 80-20 principle. You throw a lot of stuff on the wall, something will stick, but it will take a lot of stuff. Every product you're going to make is not going to succeed to that level. But there is one very beautiful thing in this particular software company running line of things, which is not there actually in the music business. This is the only kind of branch of music business which will give you this boon if you choose to be a developer and stick around. Is that, honestly, I don't have a single failure product. When I say this, what do I mean? That I don't have a single failure product. It means that even products which didn't pick up, say, in the first year of release, sometimes caught on the second, some on the third. So their shelf life is tremendous. It's like almost like old music was, you can still hear it. So it has this tremendous shelf life that if you've not reached your customer today, don't be in despair. The second product or the third product might bring you on the map, and then your followers will go and rediscover what's behind. It's like almost like I discovered Stevie Wonder in 1984 and 85, and then I'm like, I want to hear every record Stevie Wonder has made. Then I go back and I hear, what a great songwriter he is and his stuff from the 70s. And so, it's just like that. It's like discovering an artist. It's the same with this, except like I said, music won't sell like once it's been done and it's on the charts. But the products, the one ray of hope is that if you want to be a developer and if you can stick it around long enough, you might actually make it in a way where none of the things you made eventually were a failure. It'll catch up. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
We have a couple comments and questions from our audience. Paul Davis says, 10 years ago, I heard someone predict that the future consisted of devices with just two buttons, either one meaning that was worse and the other meaning that was better. And we seem to be getting closer and closer to that time. And Leo asks a similar question about this and asks if you see this many controls versus few controls different in different markets. So do you find that people maybe in Asian countries or in certain regions are gravitating towards liking a certain workflow over others? Have you seen anything like that?
I'll answer this part first. So it's not regional. It's actually a very discrete distinction. It's like musicians versus engineers. So people who are music people first, like play instruments, but are trying to also wear the hat of an engineer and wear the hat of a producer, will always gravitate towards less controls, because their focus is not really trying to get into that 60th band EQ. They want to get done with it, and their purpose is that I wanted to sound great. So for them, the tools which get them there quicker in the engineering part or the creation part is more appealing to them. So those type of people will always appeal, go for that. The engineer people who are like more into like, I want to make this sound as good as possible over 5 days. I've been given music, but I want to tweak every aspect of its width and its saturation and this band and all that. They obviously like will gravitate towards as much control as they can get. But then again, there is a mix, because nobody's absolutely only a musician and nobody's absolutely an engineer. Like they say that an engineer is basically a failed musician. So there's a saying which is kind of true in the sense that they found more business, maybe because music business is too populated with people. There's a lot of competition, so it kind of mixes. The people like me who write in the center. So for certain things, I need tools which need to give me that detail. And for other processes, I just want it to be like a tape processor. Honestly, for me, I don't need to control the wow and flutter. I want to slap it on so it absorbs the frequencies, what really the tape is doing, and get it out of the way. There are people who want to design their own tape machine. And for them, they need a product which controls all of this, right? What's the deviation like? What's it over time? Is it chewing the tape so much? And I want to control all those aspects and design my own tape machine. So then again, like it comes from that. It's not regional. It's more, who you are. Who are you?
Yeah. Two-Girl asks a question. I'm not sure if you have an answer for this, but they ask, what is the fine line between donation and commercial products? Is there a way that we can commercialize donation products?
Actually, I do have an answer for this in a way. If you look at it like a subscription model versus a single paid product, I would say that, because that's what it kind of leans towards. We have not done a donation model, so the pure donation system I've not tested. I honestly, like you said, I can't answer on behalf of anyone who has. But we are like leaning towards building a parallel subscription, which is kind of like a donation, which is like, like a Patreon, in fact. So which is like, if you like the product, you can use it till the time, you kind of pay for it. When it comes to perception, you see, there is a perception also. So in my opinion, when you have a paid product and it has a certain price point and it looks a certain way and it has certain quality attached to it in its presentation, people tend to pay for it to also feel that they've purchased something of value. Immediately they start feeling kind of tangible, exchange of value, that I paid this and now I got this. And sometimes donation products can tend to be treated as, oh, that's just like a sketch product for me. It might really actually blow away some, like you've seen some free products blow away some of the paid products, but you'll still see people just buying the paid product maybe way over than even the free download sometimes. So why does that happen? That again is a perception of exchange of value. That's what I've seen, because they feel I've paid $49. Now I'm going to get support on this plugin. And if there are updates on this plugin, I'm going to go for it. Whereas when they look at a donation product, they're like, I don't know what investment went into manufacturing that product. Does it even work? Will it stop working? Will it mess up my project? So I'll keep it on that, that rough system of mine out there where I can experiment and see how this goes. So I don't know. I mean, that's what I've come to understand a little bit. Maybe I might be wrong, like totally, I don't know.
I think that you make a great point, which is that that you really just have to understand your customer. There are some people who have business models that are actually counterintuitive to what most people would think would work. One that comes to mind for me is Matt Titel's Vital synthesizer, which is a synthesizer that is fully fledged. It could very well be a commercial product, and it's open source, and it.
I think your mic went off.
Yeah, it went off and it turned back on. It's been doing this the whole thing. I'm not sure what's going on with it. Universal Audio, send me another sound card. That'd be awesome if they did. But anyways, so Matt Tytel's Vital synthesizer is actually just donation. You pay whatever you want for it, and it's actually open source as well. And it's got amazing DSP. It's phenomenal. It's beautiful OpenGL graphics. Very well could have been its own commercial product. I don't know how much he's earning out of it, but he's been successful. He's been able to live off of that.
I'm sure.
But it's one of those where he's delivered above and beyond, the call. A lot of times donation products are just the bare minimum of what makes a product.
I'm sure, again, like you say, it's a perspective. We don't know for sure. He might be like super successful, and we just might be putting on. But I guess I think probably a product like that will compel people to feel the value, I suppose, and pay. So it also depends on the product itself, where this experiment might be working phenomenally. We wouldn't be aware, but it just might be working phenomenally because it's just such great a product that people just can't ignore it. They have to get their hands on it.
Exactly. Great. I think we've given a lot of great advice. Sorry, that's my dog, Toast, always making her contribution to the meetup. Is there anything else that we should add before we wrap up? Anything else you'd want to discuss?
Me? No, I think it was great insight from actually Stefano's contribution to this thing. I mean, I'm like, mine must be very boring and the least of things people want to deal with, but the stuff he was explaining and all of that was I've learned something. I'm going to take away something from this interaction. And just to add to that, like I said, one thing is developing a great system which works. And the other thing is marketing, and marketing becomes an entirely, tedious, continuous stuff that developers don't want to deal with. But like I said, this is a great period for people to get into development because of tools like Juice and because of access to third-party libraries like Stefano's libraries, and build what they want to build, and not even have to have a team of 20 people or 30 or whatever. Just start as a single person and probably make $1 million company in a year. You never know. It just depends on the product. So I would say it's the best time if you wanted to be a developer. This is the best time to probably do it.
Yeah, it's not a bad time at all. It's talks like yours and Stefano's that have really brought out an awareness that I don't think existed a few years ago. Just hearing people talk about these aspects of software development and plugin development.
And also the audio programmer, if I may add, I was saying this earlier, was that Josh and I have been friends, like he said, for a while. And it's, to be honest, when I was in the middle game of BeatSkillz, the third year out, and I was, going to get more serious into audio development. And his channel I found, and I'll be very honest to admit, there's so much I learned from that to get back onto, audio programming and Juice. And then he's personally gone out of his way to help me. So I cannot, not mention that. Plus his company of developers and all. Whenever I got stuck, I was always confident I could call Josh and he would like personally help me, or, get his team to, help us solve certain problems or develop, an entire system if we needed to. So I think the audio programmer channel itself is like, can you imagine we have something like this today, which is bringing on people to, showcase their brilliance and opening this landscape, which was a secret and so hidden and so private and so, under lock and key. It's finally exposed, giving, people with great ideas now an opportunity to quickly learn from the audio programmer channel, get started with your basic plugins, get started with, your foundation, and then go on to probably advanced tools like from Orchestron and, get into something which is built out for them and put it together. So kudos to the channel, I would say, and to Josh.
Second to that.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the kind words. Yeah, and it wouldn't be anywhere without people like yourselves to spread that brilliance. And I really appreciate your ability to share and to just open your knowledge to other people. Like you said, there could be a tendency sometimes when you have the knowledge to, sometimes people want to hoard the knowledge and feel that if I spread it, that other people will steal it or they'll take it or they'll copy it. And what we don't realize is that people are living their own lives, and a lot of people, they don't have the time to just divert from what they're doing to look at what you're doing and saying, oh, I'm going to do the same thing. This thing of open sourcing and spreading knowledge, I think really just puts a great karma into the world, and that it's there to help document these things for future generations of audio developers to come. So, great. We're still getting questions in. Shall I go through for both Gaurav and Stefano? Shall I just fire these away before we sign off?
I'm good, yeah.
Okay. Very quickly, Gaurav, how important is it to have a segmented market, targeting just initial plugin users versus experienced engineers? This is a question from Joaquin.
Very interesting question. I didn't think of it like that, but I think automatically, I think I just went for the beginner market first. So that worked out well for me because I could ease into the business without, hurting myself too much. The stuff I didn't know about at that time. So yeah, probably the beginner market is maybe a good way to start.
Yeah. It's like sometimes I think one theme that I've taken away from this is that you've got to go with what you know, right? Like, 70s and 80s sounds, that style of music, what that market is like, what that audience is like. You've had the experience in there as a composer, and that's what you've used to fuel your product ideas. And that's what I always tell people is, if you're a guitar player, make a guitar product because you know about what people in that space want, more about it than what the average person would know. If you're a DJ like myself, I'm very keen to know what sort of things I like in the DJing market and what things I don't like. So that would be the market that I would go towards. So you have to go. It's easy
to fall into that trap of, hey, this is popular, I think I can make a plugin which can be better. And nothing about it, but just going by what you think is the market demand. You can really fall into that and hurt yourself. So
yeah. That doesn't work. That doesn't, well, in my experience, when I've tried that doesn't work, because by the time you've caught up to the knowledge base of what it takes to make a product like that, the market has passed you by. And, whereas what you've done is you've started on a ground level with your products, and it's taken a little bit of time, but that the wave has come around and you've been right there and then once again, people say, oh, BeatSkillz is successful with the products that they're making, I'm just going to copy them. By the time they figure out how they, getting through the development cycle, getting their products out and everything, that's already passed by. So gotta go with what you know. Stefano, Wave Morpher has a question. Is there a benefit from using a filter rather than a linear interpolation for smoothing parameter values?
That's a good question. In certain cases, yes, but it depends on the kind of parameter you're controlling. Usually, I don't know, for example, certain filter in general, it works more smoothly with filters, especially for filter parameters. But there's no general rule that I know of. Use whatever works best for you.
Yeah. And there's another question from Wave Morpher. How is using a filter? Oh, this is actually the same question. He was actually just really curious. So we answered that. Okay, great. Yeah, I think that's it, and I think that's a good place for us to end the meetup, actually. So yeah. So thank you very much, Gaurav, for sharing your insights.
My pleasure.
And I think this is awesome. This wasn't intentional, but it felt like there were two different aspects here. There was one aspect that was like a DSP creation aspect, really homing in on the minutia of creating an awesome DSP algorithm. And then that being a critical part of making of making a product or of making a plugin. And then there's the larger, the 360 aspect, which is the marketing, the communication with people. How do you create a story and a product that's compelling? How do you actually communicate with and support your users? Which is another critical aspect. So, and it feels like there are some great sides, and you can gravitate towards one side or the other side, and it's still all successful. So there's no one road in this field to success. You can there are multiple roads to that pot of gold, so to speak.
Yeah, it felt like those two talks sat together really well tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much for your time, and I'd like to give a thanks to the sponsors again, Focusrite, Sonics, and Juice for sponsoring the Audio Programmer Meetup. And without them, we would not be here. I wanted to mention the next Audio Programmer Meetup. I always forget to do this.
Yeah. Timar told me to remind you.
Yes.
I was just about to jump in.
Were you? Do you have the date?
I think it's the exact same date as this month because of us not being in a leap year. So I think it is the 8th of March.
Yes. And while you did that, I pulled up my calendar quickly, and I can confirm that it is indeed the 8th of March. So that's the next meetup. And as we mentioned before, we're always looking for talks, looking for people who are curious about sharing their ideas. You don't have to have 20 years experience in this field. Please share your ideas. We would love to hear from you. The link is in the description in the video. And with that, I'd like to thank Rachel as well for being an awesome host for us. And
thank you. I just want to say a quick thank you to everyone that's reached out to me from the community following last month's Audio Programmer Meetup. It's been great to get chatting to a bunch of you, and I'm just proud to be part of such a friendly community.
Yeah, super awesome. Yeah, I feel privileged all the time about how welcoming people have been just over the past 3 or 4 years that I've been in here. I think that sometimes when you're when people are new to the industry, they can feel a little bit maybe hesitant and feeling like that more experienced people will say, oh, that's not the way to do it, or, oh, you're wrong, or, oh, you should have known this. In my experience, I've always found this community to be very welcoming and very, very inclusive in terms of sharing knowledge and getting to know other people and hearing their other stories. So that's awesome to hear, Rachel. Yes. So yes, we will be back March 8th. And with that, we will sign off. From all of us to all of you. Thank you very much. And I will end the live stream now. So
good night.
take care, everybody.
Bye.
Have a good evening.